The morning sunlight spilled through the blinds of the Thompson household, casting soft stripes across the living room floor. Emily Thompson, a bright-eyed 3-year-old with curly brown hair and a tiny pink dress, sat cross-legged on a fluffy rug, surrounded by an army of stuffed animals. She clutched Mr. Bunny, her favorite plush, pressing the worn toy to her chest as she made high-pitched squeaky voices for each of her companions. Her imagination ran wild, transforming the living room into a jungle where animals danced, leapt, and whispered secrets. Laughter bubbled from her small mouth, a sound that seemed to fill every corner of the house. In the kitchen, Michael Thompson moved around with the practiced efficiency of a father used to balancing household chaos. He was chopping toast and brewing coffee, all while glancing periodically at Emily to ensure she hadn't wandered into trouble. He smiled at her antics, shaking his head. "Okay, Mr. Bunny, be careful with the lion," he said, half joking, pretending to dodge an invisible predator. Emily squealed in delight and pointed at her stuffed lion, declaring its bravery. It was an ordinary morning, the kind of quiet domestic rhythm that families take for granted. Sarah, Emily's mother, had stepped out to run a quick errand at the local grocery store, promising to return before lunch. Michael had assured her he could manage, confident that the small, tight-knit neighborhood would notice anything unusual. But ordinary can turn terrifying in a single heartbeat. That heartbeat came swiftly. There was a sharp, almost inaudible click at the front door. Michael froze for just a second, his gut tightening. Then, with terrifying speed, a masked man burst into the house. His movements were precise, predatory, practiced. Michael instinctively tried to block the intruder, his arms flailing to shield Emily. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice loud and commanding, but it was no match for the intruder's sudden, violent push. A man grabbed Emily with one arm, her small body rigid in shock, and shoved Michael into the living room. In the chaos, Mr. Bunny slipped from Emily's grasp, landing on the rug with a pitiful flop. Emily's cries pierced the air, small but sharp, a sound that would haunt the neighbors even after the sirens arrived. The intruder shoved them both toward a waiting van outside, his face obscured, movements calculated. Michael struggled to free himself, fighting with every ounce of strength, but the man was stronger, faster, and merciless. Minutes later, the white van disappeared around the corner, tires screeching against the asphalt. The neighborhood, previously calm and sunlit, suddenly felt tense, its serenity shattered. Mrs. Jenkins from across the street had just stepped onto her porch when she saw the van accelerate. "Call the police," she shouted, her voice quivering. Within moments, Sarah returned from the store, groceries in hand, only to be greeted by flashing lights and the sound of her neighbor's frantic whispers. A 911 call was a flurry of broken sentences and tears. "My husband. My daughter. They've been taken. Please, please hurry," Sarah cried, panic gripping her throat. Within minutes, police sirens wailed down the streets, officers racing toward the Thompson home with urgency that matched the chaos. Detective Lisa Morales, a seasoned investigator known for her calm under pressure, arrived at the scene. She took in the neighborhood, observing the chaos, and immediately began orchestrating the search. "Lock down the area. Interview every witness. No detail is too small," she commanded. Meanwhile, Michael, bruised and frightened, tried to explain what had happened to the responding officers. His voice trembled, but his description was clear. Emily, only 3 years old, had been taken along with him, the details of her abduction painting a chilling picture. "She's so small, so helpless," he said, his voice breaking. "You have to find her fast." Authorities wasted no time. Officers fanned out, checking streets, alleys, and traffic cameras. Helicopters hovered above, their rotors cutting through the morning air scanning for any trace of the white van. Social media alerts and Amber Alerts were activated immediately, broadcasting Emily's description, her pink dress, her curly hair, and the distinctive bunny she always carried. The town's quiet morning had erupted into a nationwide search. Emily, for her part, was clinging to her father in the van, terrified but surprisingly composed. Her small mind was struggling to process what had happened, yet she remembered the safety lessons her father had tried to teach her. Stay calm, stay quiet, and signal for help if you can. Clutching Mr. Bunny tightly, she observed everything: the man's quick movements, the direction of the van, and any opportunity to make a silent plea for rescue. Back at the Thompson home, neighbors gathered, forming a circle of worried faces. Mothers held their children close, men spoke in hurried whispers, and officers continued their methodical search. Detective Morales coordinated with the FBI, knowing that time was critical. 3-year-old children respond differently under stress. "She may already be trying to help herself," she said. Her words carried a weight of hope mingled with fear. By mid-morning, a decision was made to bring in a highly trained police dog, Rex, a German shepherd with years of experience in locating missing persons. Rex's handler, Officer Daniels, had worked with the dog for over a decade. "He's one of the best," Daniels said, kneeling to pet the dog. "If she's out there and signals, Rex will find her." The dog's ears twitched at the word search, and he let out a low, focused growl. As the van wound its way through side streets, Emily noticed a faint silhouette in the distance of Rex, waiting with Officer Daniels. Her small mind raced. Could she somehow reach out? Could she make them notice her? Even in fear, a glimmer of hope sparked inside her. She remembered the hand signal her father had shown her, a simple gesture that meant, "Help me." That moment, small but monumental, would change everything. Emily's courage, her instinctive bravery, and her bond with her father's lessons were about to intersect with Rex's training and Officer Daniels' keen observation. It was the beginning of a chain of events that would shock the town, inspire the nation, and culminate in a courtroom scene no one would ever forget. The morning that began with laughter and play had turned into a high-stakes chase for a tiny girl's life. But in that fear, in that chaos, the seeds of courage were planted. Emily, clutching Mr. Bunny, and her father, battered but determined, were the heart of a story that would capture the essence of bravery, hope, and the unexpected heroism of both humans and animals alike. By the time the police arrived at the Thompson neighborhood, word of the abduction had already spread like wildfire. Sirens blared, neighbors peered out of windows, and officers fanned across streets, trying to piece together the earliest possible clues. Detective Lisa Morales took charge immediately, her experience telling her that every minute counted. She knelt beside Michael, whose face was pale and bruised, and asked for every detail: the route the van took, the physical description of the abductor, the time frame. Michael's voice trembled as he recounted the ordeal, his words jumbled with fear, shock, and urgency. Meanwhile, Sarah, Emily's mother, paced frantically outside, clutching the empty grocery bag in her arms. Tears streamed down her face as she begged neighbors for information. "Please, if anyone saw anything at all, tell me," she cried. The air was thick with tension, a mixture of fear, hope, and disbelief. Neighbors murmured reassurances, but their own eyes betrayed the uncertainty. Emily was only 3, a little girl no bigger than a backpack, and she had vanished from their street, taken by a stranger in a swift, violent moment. Detective Morales immediately called for backup, mobilizing all available resources. Officers set up checkpoints at main roads, traffic cameras were accessed, and alerts were sent to surrounding counties. An Amber Alert went out, complete with Emily's picture. Small, brown-haired, pink dress, clutching a rabbit toy. Every vehicle passing through the area was scrutinized. Every passing face in stores and parks was a potential lead. The urgency was palpable. Into this high-pressure scenario came Rex, a German shepherd with a reputation for unmatched tracking ability. Officer Daniels had worked with him for over 10 years. The dog, lean and muscular, exuded intelligence and focus. His ears pricked as he sniffed the air, tail stiff, eyes scanning the environment. "He's ready," Daniels said quietly to Morales. "If Emily's alive, and I know she is, he'll find her." The decision was made to start with scent tracking near the Thompson house. Michael, still trembling, handed over a small blanket Emily had slept with the night before. Rex sniffed it immediately, letting out a low growl of acknowledgement. Morales watched as the dog's posture shifted, the muscles in his legs taut and alert. Officer Daniels whispered commands, and Rex bolted forward, sniffing the ground and the air with precision. Every officer in the vicinity fell silent, instinctively giving the dog space. Meanwhile, Emily clutched Mr. Bunny tightly, sitting in the corner of the van as the abductor drove recklessly through suburban streets. She observed him carefully, the way he gripped the steering wheel, the rhythm of his breaths, the shadows that fell across his face from the passing trees. Her mind, though small, clung to every lesson her father had taught her about staying safe. Stay calm, don't cry too loud, and look for opportunities to signal for help. It was a lot for a 3-year-old to process, yet her determination shone through her fear. As Rex navigated streets, alleyways, and small parks, Morales coordinated with radio operators, providing updates every few seconds. "Dogs heading north on Elm Street, approaching the main intersection," she reported. Officers adjusted roadblocks, diverting traffic, and ensuring the van's path could be intercepted if needed. The tension in the air was almost suffocating. Every passing moment felt like an eternity, and the town seemed to hold its collective breath. At the rest stop, fate aligned. Emily noticed the faint outline of Rex and Officer Daniels in the distance. Her small body trembled as hope collided with fear. She remembered the hand gesture her father had taught her, a tiny movement of the fingers, nearly imperceptible, to signal distress. She glanced at the abductor, who was distracted, and slowly, carefully, she lifted her hand and made the subtle gesture. Rex's instincts kicked in immediately. He tilted his head, sensing the unusual signal, and let out a small, alert bark. Officer Daniels followed his gaze, squinting against the morning sun. Then, without hesitation, Rex broke into a sprint, weaving through parked cars and cautiously approaching the van. Every step was measured, precise, and focused. The abductor noticed too late. The van lurched in panic as Rex approached, barking fiercely. Emily, sensing that help had arrived, felt a surge of courage. She pointed directly at Rex and whispered, "Help, please." Her small voice, barely audible, carried a world of fear, hope, and determination. In that moment, the tiny girl became a beacon for everyone around her, the officers, the dog, and even the abductor, who now realized that his plan was unraveling. Officer Daniels acted quickly. He drew his radio, calling for backup, and cautiously approached the van, keeping Rex at the ready. The abductor, panicked and desperate, tried to reverse. The traffic officers had already blocked the street ahead. With no escape, he abandoned his vehicle, trying to flee on foot. Rex, trained for such situations, kept him contained while officers moved in. Within minutes, the abductor was apprehended, handcuffed, and led away, defeated. Emily was immediately scooped into her father's arms. She clutched Mr. Bunny, her wide eyes shimmering with tears and relief. Michael hugged her tightly, whispering reassurances and praise. "You did it, baby. You helped them find you." Her small hand patted Rex gently, as if she understood that this dog, too, had played a heroic role. Officer Daniels knelt beside her. "You were very brave," he said softly. Rex barked once, almost as if acknowledging her courage. Back at the Thompson home, the neighborhood buzzed with relief and astonishment. Sarah held Emily tightly, tears flowing freely, thanking the officers and Rex repeatedly. Morales gave a statement to the local news, highlighting Emily's courage. At 3 years old, she did everything right. Her calm, her awareness, her subtle signaling, it saved her life. The story spread rapidly, capturing hearts across the town, the county, and soon the nation. Even as the immediate danger passed, the memory of that morning stayed vivid for everyone involved. Michael replayed every second in his mind, grateful for the bravery of his tiny daughter, the skill of Rex, and the relentless dedication of the officers. Emily, though still too young to fully comprehend the gravity of the events, had proven that even the smallest among us could make an extraordinary difference. By afternoon, local authorities organized a debrief, piecing together the sequence of events. Officers commended each other, yet all agreed that the pivotal moment, the subtle hand signal, the recognition by Rex, and Emily's courage was something extraordinary. Morales made notes, intending to include the event in future training exercises, emphasizing that in some cases, a child's instinct and courage could be just as crucial as any law enforcement strategy. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, Emily rested in her mother's arms, Mr. Bunny clutched to her chest. Though exhausted, she smiled faintly, a hint of pride shining through. Michael whispered words of love and reassurance, promising that nothing would ever hurt her like that again. And somewhere nearby, Rex rested quietly, ears twitching, tail low but relaxed, the hero who had answered a child's silent plea, bridging the gap between terror and safety. That day marked the beginning of a story that would grow beyond the small suburban town. Emily's courage, Rex's instincts, and the officer's dedication would come together to create a narrative of hope, heroism, and resilience, a story that would soon reach the courtroom and leave an entire nation in awe. The search had ended successfully, but the journey for justice, recognition, and healing was only beginning. The rest stop was quiet, almost eerily so, except for the distant hum of cars on the highway. Emily sat curled on the corner seat of the van, clutching Mr. Bunny so tightly that the plush toy's ears were bent backward. Her tiny heart pounded in her chest, a rapid drumbeat of fear and adrenaline. The abductor's attention was momentarily distracted by his phone, giving her the briefest window to act. Emily had learned from her father that even in the scariest situations, small actions could make a difference. She needed to be smart, she needed to be brave, and she needed help. Her brown eyes scanned the open area outside the van. And then she saw him, Rex, the German shepherd, his sleek black and tan coat gleaming in the afternoon sun. He was accompanied by Officer Daniels, who was kneeling, scanning the surroundings, and waiting for his moment. Emily's fingers twitched instinctively, recalling the tiny gesture her father had taught her, a subtle flick of the hand that meant, "Help me." She tried to make it as small as possible, careful not to alert the abductor. Rex's ears perked instantly. The dog froze, his nose twitching as he picked up on the scent of the tiny girl, mixed with the fear and desperation radiating from her. Officer Daniels noticed the shift immediately. "Rex?" he asked, a hint of tension in his voice. The dog let out a low, deliberate growl, then bolted toward the van with precision. Every movement was fluid, controlled, trained to perfection. Inside the van, the abductor looked up in surprise as the dog's barking grew louder. Panic flickered across his face, but he tried to remain in control. Emily, sensing the moment, whispered to herself, "It's okay. It's okay, Mr. Bunny. Be brave." Her small hand flicked again at Rex, barely visible, but clear enough for the highly trained dog to interpret. Rex barked sharply and tugged at his leash, signaling to Officer Daniels that they were ready to act. Officer Daniels radioed backup, his voice urgent but calm. "We've got eyes on the target. Dog is engaged. Stand by for intercept." Within moments, additional officers moved to strategic positions, surrounding the van while keeping a safe distance. The abductor realized his options were shrinking. His hands tightened around the steering wheel, knuckles white, but Rex's presence, calm, focused, and unrelenting, had a psychological effect. The dog was more than muscle. He was intelligence and intuition in action. Emily felt a small surge of courage. For the first time since the morning, she believed she could help herself. She leaned slightly toward the open window, making sure her fingers were visible, her eyes wide and pleading. "Help me," she whispered softly. Rex reacted instantly, his paws striking the pavement as he ran to the vehicle, circling and barking assertively. The abductor panicked, slamming his foot on the gas, trying to escape, but traffic officers had already set up roadblocks ahead. A van screeched to a halt, and the abductor realized there was no way out. Officer Daniels, using a calm but firm tone, ordered the abductor to exit the vehicle. Rex continued to bark, standing protectively near Emily, his body tense but controlled. Emily pressed herself close to Mr. Bunny, her small fingers brushing the dog's fur as if seeking reassurance. "It's okay, Mr. Bunny. He's here," she murmured, her voice trembling but steady. The dog responded with a low whine, acknowledging her bravery. The abductor hesitated, realizing that escape was impossible. Two officers approached carefully, weapons drawn but not aimed at the child. The abductor stepped out, hands raised, and was immediately handcuffed. Relief washed over Emily, mingled with exhaustion. She had acted in a way far beyond her years, demonstrating presence of mind that astonished everyone on the scene. Michael, who had been guided by police to a safe location nearby, rushed forward, embracing his daughter tightly. "You did it, Emily," Michael whispered, tears running down his face. "You were so brave. You saved yourself." Emily's small arms wrapped around him, still clutching Mr. Bunny, her body trembling from the intensity of the morning's events. She looked up at Rex, who wagged his tail slightly, eyes gleaming with intelligence and recognition. Officer Daniels knelt down, speaking softly to the little girl. "You were very brave. You helped everyone find you. Good job." As news of the rescue spread, media crews began arriving, documenting the scene with cautious respect. The story quickly caught national attention. A 3-year-old girl, held captive, had used her wits and courage to signal a police dog, leading to her own rescue. Headlines praised her bravery and the teamwork between humans and animals. Emily, oblivious to the broader attention, only knew that she was safe with her parents and that Mr. Bunny was still intact. Detective Morales arrived at the scene shortly afterward. She knelt beside Michael and Emily, studying the child's face. "You were amazing," she said quietly. "Most kids your age would have been too scared to do anything. You stayed calm and helped us help you." Emily blinked, processing the compliment, then pressed her face into her father's shoulder. For a 3-year-old, the day had been terrifying, exhausting, and extraordinary. Rex was given a moment of recognition as well. Officers patted the dog, praising his keen instincts and swift response. For Emily, the bond was immediate. She leaned against him, small hands stroking his fur, and whispered, "Good boy," a phrase that would later echo through courtrooms and headlines, capturing the essence of the rescue in just 2 words. After the abductor was taken into custody, Emily's parents were interviewed separately by authorities to reconstruct the sequence of events. Each detail, from the initial abduction to her subtle signaling, was analyzed and celebrated as evidence of extraordinary courage under pressure. The abductor's motives and background were quickly uncovered, but the focus remained on Emily and Rex, the child who had acted beyond her years. and the dog who had responded instinctively to save her life. The rest stop, once quiet and ordinary, had become the stage for a small hero's first victory. Emily's tiny hands had made a monumental difference. Her ability to stay calm, to follow the lessons taught by her father, and to trust her instincts created a chain of events that no one could have predicted. Rex's training and responsiveness completed the chain, bridging the gap between danger and safety. By evening, Emily and her family were safe at home, recovering from the ordeal. Officers returned to their stations, and Morales filed her report, highlighting the extraordinary combination of child instinct, canine skill, and human coordination that had led to the successful rescue. The story would go on to inspire many, demonstrating that courage, no matter the size of the person displaying it, can change outcomes in the most critical moments. Emily slept that night holding Mr. Bunny, exhausted but calm. She had faced fear head-on and prevailed, guided by a small gesture, quick thinking, and the loyalty of a remarkable dog. In her dreams, the events of the day played out differently. She imagined running through fields, free and laughing, while Rex trotted beside her, ears flapping and tail wagging. It was a small child's way of processing heroism, bravery, and relief. Little did anyone know, the story was far from over. Emily's bravery at the rest stop was only the beginning. The courtroom, the trial, and the moment when she would point at Rex and speak the two words that shocked everyone were still ahead. But Part 3 had established something critical. A tiny hero, armed with instinct and courage, had faced danger, signaled for help, and survived. The chain of heroism had been set in motion, and it would continue to unfold in ways that no one could predict. Weeks had passed since Emily's daring rescue, but the shadow of the abduction still lingered over the Thompson family. The small suburban town, once tranquil and familiar, now buzzed with the heightened awareness of fear and heroism. The trial was set, and it would take place in a courtroom packed with law enforcement, reporters, and curious citizens eager to witness the story that had captured the nation. Emily, only 3 years old, would play a pivotal role, though none could predict how her presence would shape the courtroom drama. On the morning of the trial, the courthouse exuded an air of tension. Flashing cameras lined the hallways, reporters murmured in hushed tones, and officers positioned themselves strategically, ready to maintain order. Inside, the room was packed with spectators, attorneys, and officials. Michael Thompson held Emily's hand, his knuckles white, a protective presence that radiated a mix of fear and determination. Beside him, Sarah fidgeted nervously, her eyes darting between the judge, the suspect, and her tiny daughter. Emily, clutching Mr. Bunny, seemed calm yet alert, her wide brown eyes absorbing every detail. The defendant, the man who had stolen their morning, sat at the defense table with a mask of indifference, though subtle tremors betrayed his anxiety. He was flanked by his attorney, who whispered instructions and counsel, their murmurs barely audible of the quiet hum of anticipation. The contrast between the confident officers and the tense suspect created an electric atmosphere, a palpable sense of anticipation and dread. Every person present sensed that this trial was not just about justice, but about courage, truth, and the extraordinary story of a tiny girl and a police dog. The judge entered, and a hush swept over the room. The gavel struck, demanding attention, and proceedings began. The prosecution laid out the case with meticulous precision, detailing the abduction, the threats, and the harrowing experience Emily and her father endured. Photographs of the van, street maps, and witness testimonies were presented. Every detail painted a picture of terror, yet hope. As the narrative progressed to the moment when Emily's bravery and Rex's intervention had turned the tide. Emily sat quietly throughout the opening statements, her fingers gripping Mr. Bunny tightly. Despite her age, her presence was commanding in a subtle way. She was small, fragile, and innocent, yet her eyes carried the memory of fear and triumph. Each mention of Rex, the trained police dog, elicited a tiny glimmer of recognition and relief. To the courtroom, she was a child, yes, but she was also a living witness, a symbol of courage that could not be diminished by age or circumstance. As the prosecution called officers to the stand, the details of the rescue were recounted with precision and reverence. Officer Daniels described Rex's acute responsiveness, his immediate recognition of Emily's subtle gestures, and the precision with which he guided law enforcement to her location. Morales described coordinated search, the strategic decisions made in real time, and the collective effort that culminated in Emily's safety. Every witness highlighted the unique interplay between human judgment, canine skill, and the instinctive courage of a 3-year-old. The defense, predictably, attempted to cast doubt on certain aspects of the rescue, focusing on procedural technicalities. Yet the emotional gravity of the situation could not be denied. The room was thick with anticipation as Emily's turn approached. The prosecution, recognizing the delicate nature of presenting a child witness, requested that the courtroom remain calm. Cameras shifted, reporters whispered, and everyone leaned forward. The tension was so thick that one could almost feel the collective breath of the room, suspended in mid-air. Emily was escorted to the witness stand, guided gently by her mother. She climbed carefully, clutching Mr. Bunny, and settled into the small chair, legs swinging slightly. Her voice, soft but clear, addressed the judge. "I'm Emily." The judge smiled gently, nodding, as if acknowledging both her courage and the enormity of what she had endured. Every eye in the courtroom fixed on her, waiting for what a 3-year-old could possibly reveal in a world dominated by adult voices. Rex, who had accompanied the officers into the courtroom, remained quietly at Officer Daniels' side. The dog's presence was reassuring, a living reminder of the rescue, and a silent participant in the drama unfolding. Emily's eyes flicked to him, and for the first time in weeks, a small smile tugged at her lips. She understood, instinctively, that Rex had been her ally, her protector, and now, in the courtroom, he was a symbol of the bravery that had saved her life. The prosecution's attorney asked Emily to identify who had helped her during the abduction. For a moment, Emily hesitated, scanning the room carefully. Her small hand rose, pointing directly at Rex. The courtroom went silent, all eyes shifting to the dog who had become an unsung hero. Emily's lips parted, and in a whisper that somehow filled the vast room, she said, "Good boy." The impact was immediate. Gasps swept through the audience. Even seasoned reporters and officers were visibly moved. The 2 words, simple yet profound, carried the weight of fear, hope, gratitude, and heroism. Every person in the room understood the meaning behind them. This tiny girl had survived, acted with courage, and acknowledged her rescuer in a way that transcended age or expectation. Michael and Sarah wept quietly, holding each other's hands tightly. Officer Daniels patted Rex, who sat stoically, ears slightly perked, acknowledging the recognition with the quiet dignity of a true hero. The judge leaned back, nodding subtly, understanding that the moment was both legal testimony and emotional resonance. Emily, despite her size, had commanded the courtroom with her presence and her words. The media, already captivated, recorded every detail, recognizing that this was not just a legal proceeding, but a story that would inspire people nationwide. Social media buzzed with headlines. 3-year-old points at police dog in courtroom. Child hero recognizes canine rescuer. 2 words that shock a nation. The courtroom had become a stage for a moment of profound humanity. Innocence, courage, and gratitude expressed in the smallest, most powerful form. Even the defense attorney, trained to minimize emotional impact, seemed momentarily moved. He glanced at his client, who shifted uncomfortably, realizing that the tiny witness held the moral high ground in the courtroom. Emily's brief words, spoken with clarity and sincerity, cut through the procedural complexities and reminded everyone present why justice and heroism often intersect in unexpected ways. The courtroom drama continued with other witnesses and procedural testimonies, but the moment of Emily pointing at Rex and saying, "Good boy," remained the emotional center. It was replayed in the minds of the spectators, whispered in newsrooms, and highlighted in national broadcasts. The story of the 3-year-old girl and her canine hero had reached a climax, yet the trial was far from over. Evidence, legal arguments, and the final judgment awaited. As the day ended, Emily returned to her parents' arms, still clutching Mr. Bunny. The experience had been overwhelming, yet she had faced it with bravery beyond her years. Rex lay quietly by Officer Daniels, his presence a silent reassurance that courage could take many forms, human and animal alike. Morales noted in her files that this case would be referenced in future training for child abduction responses, highlighting the remarkable combination of child instinct, canine skill, and law enforcement precision. In the quiet moments after the courtroom emptied, Emily's parents hugged her tightly. "You were amazing today," Michael whispered. "So brave, so smart." Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. "The world will hear your story, baby," she said softly. Emily's eyes sparkled faintly, reflecting a mixture of fatigue and pride. Though she was only 3, she had already become a symbol of hope, courage, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. The courtroom, once a stage for legal proceedings, had been transformed by innocence and heroism. Emily's words, simple, sincere, and profoundly moving, had left an indelible mark on everyone present. It was a reminder that even the smallest among us could influence the course of events, and that courage and gratitude often speak louder than the most eloquent arguments. The courtroom was silent, charged with anticipation. Every eye was fixed on the small figure of Emily Thompson as she stood clutching her stuffed bunny, her wide brown eyes scanning the room with a mix of fear, curiosity, and quiet determination. At only 3 years old, she carried a gravity that transcended her size, a presence that seemed to command attention despite her tender age. The trial had been tense, with detailed testimonies, witness accounts, and evidence outlining the terrifying events of the abduction. But now, the room waited for the moment everyone had been talking about, Emily's recognition of her rescuer. Emily's gaze shifted slowly, intentionally, across the courtroom. She scanned the rows of officers, attorneys, journalists, and spectators, taking in the faces that surrounded her. Each person held their breath, knowing that the smallest movement or sound from her could break the delicate tension. Then her eyes locked onto Rex, the German shepherd who had been her guardian angel at the rest stop. He sat alert beside Officer Daniels, ears perked, tail still but attentive, his gaze fixed on her. The connection between child and dog was immediate, profound, and electric. For a long moment, the room seemed to hold its collective breath. Emily, trembling slightly, lifted her small hand and pointed toward Rex. The gesture was delicate, almost imperceptible to anyone not paying close attention. Yet the courtroom seemed to lean in, sensing the significance of the act. The silence was thick, and in that quiet, Emily's next words would resonate far beyond the walls of the courtroom. She bent slightly, her lips parting, and whispered with surprising clarity, "Good boy." The impact was immediate and visceral. Gasps rippled through the courtroom, echoing off the high ceilings. Spectators, officers, and journalists alike turned to one another, eyes wide in disbelief and awe. The defense attorney froze mid-note, jaw slack, caught off guard by the sheer power of those two simple words. Even the judge, stoic and composed through weeks of testimony, leaned forward slightly, nodding as if acknowledging the profound truth expressed by a child, whose voice carried more courage than many adults could muster. Michael Thompson, standing beside his daughter, felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He pulled Emily close, whispering, "You did it, baby. You said it." His voice trembled with a mixture of relief, pride, and lingering fear. Sarah buried her face in Emily's curls, weeping silently, overwhelmed by the emotion of the moment. Their daughter, their tiny, vulnerable child, had confronted the enormity of the ordeal with courage and clarity. The room seemed to vibrate with the energy of recognition, the acknowledgement of bravery and loyalty embodied in the bond between Emily and Rex. Rex, for his part, responded with a quiet dignity. The dog tilted his head, wagged his tail slightly, and let out a low, approving bark. His presence, calm and controlled, amplified the emotional resonance of the moment. He had been trained to respond to signals, to act instinctively in life-threatening situations. Yet the recognition he received now, an acknowledgement from the one he had saved, was beyond any training. It was pure, unspoken gratitude expressed in the smallest, most meaningful way. The courtroom erupted in subtle but undeniable emotion. Some spectators dabbed at their eyes, journalists scribbled frantically to capture the moment, and officers exchanged glances of respect and awe. Emily's 2 words had transformed a legal proceeding into a testament of courage and trust. In that instant, the story was no longer just about abduction and rescue. It was about the power of instinct, the importance of trust, and the profound connections that can exist between humans and animals. The prosecution seized the moment delicately, allowing the courtroom to breathe and absorb the significance before continuing. Morales nodded at Officer Daniels, who gently guided Rex to sit more formally, ensuring that the dog remained a central figure without causing distraction. The symbolism was clear. Rex had acted heroically, and now, in Emily's acknowledgement, his role was cemented not just as a tool of law enforcement, but as a partner, a guardian, and a hero in his own right. Emily's courage did not end with her words. She took a tentative step closer to Rex, her small fingers brushing the fur of the German shepherd. The gesture, tender and instinctive, elicited a quiet ripple of emotion throughout the courtroom. Journalists leaned forward, cameras capturing every movement, recognizing the story unfolding as one of innocence and heroism intertwined. Michael and Sarah watched, hearts swelling with pride, knowing that their daughter had performed an act of bravery that transcended her years. The defense attorney, once focused solely on technicalities, realized that Emily's presence had altered the courtroom dynamics irreversibly. This was no longer a simple legal proceeding. It had become a narrative of courage, empathy, and moral clarity. The abductor's attempts to minimize or obscure the truth were irrelevant in the face of such undeniable bravery. Emily, small and vulnerable, had commanded attention with 2 words that spoke louder than any argument or evidence could. Morales made a mental note to incorporate this case into future training for child abduction scenarios. The combination of a child's instinctive bravery, a well-trained police dog, and rapid law enforcement response had proven extraordinary. She knew that law enforcement officers could study procedures and tactics endlessly, but moments like this, where courage, instinct, and trust converged, were beyond planning. They were the unpredictable, miraculous intersections of human and animal capability that saved lives. The courtroom slowly settled into a quieter rhythm as proceedings resumed, but the moment of recognition lingered in every mind present. Emily's bravery had shifted the emotional weight of the trial. She had shown that even the youngest among us could influence outcomes in profound ways. Her whispered words, delivered with the sincerity only a child could muster, became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary bonds that can form in moments of extreme stress. As the day progressed, Emily remained composed, clutching Mr. Bunny, occasionally glancing at Rex, every time their eyes met. A silent communication passed between them, a reaffirmation of trust, bravery, and shared experience. The courtroom had become more than a place of judgment. It was a stage for the recognition of heroism in its purest form. Those two simple words, "Good boy," had left an indelible mark on everyone present, a moment that would be remembered far beyond the trial itself. By evening, the courtroom emptied slowly, leaving behind a lingering sense of awe. Emily's parents guided her gently from the room, supporting her tiny steps, while Officer Daniels led Rex out with calm authority. The story of a 3-year-old girl and her heroic dog had captivated not only the local community, but would soon inspire countless others nationwide. It was a story that transcended fear, focusing instead on courage, instinct, and the extraordinary impact of even the smallest actions. That night, as Emily lay in her bed clutching Mr. Bunny, the events of the courtroom replayed in her mind in fragments. The gaze of Rex, the quiet nods of officers, and the weight of everyone's attention focused on her. Though she was only 3, she had faced the enormity of the situation and responded with clarity, courage, and instinctive bravery. Her whispered words had bridged the divide between child and hero, human and animal, fear and triumph. The day's events marked a turning point, not only in the trial, but in the narrative that would follow Emily and Rex for the rest of their lives. In that moment, the courtroom had witnessed a miracle of courage. A child, a dog, and 2 words that crystallized the essence of bravery. Everyone present knew that this story would be recounted for years to come, a testament to the power of instinct, training, and the extraordinary bonds that can save lives when all hope seems lost. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving behind an atmosphere thick with awe and reflection. Emily Thompson, still clutching Mr. Bunny, was gently guided by her parents out of the room. Michael and Sarah's hands were firmly around their tiny daughter, their fingers interlaced in a protective embrace that conveyed relief, love, and lingering tension. Outside, the world seemed to pause, as if holding its breath in reverence for what had just unfolded inside a 3-year-old girl. A courageous whisper and a heroic police dog that had captured hearts far beyond the walls of the courtroom. Word of Emily's bravery spread rapidly. Reporters, who had witnessed the moment firsthand, filed stories with urgency and reverence. Headlines splashed across newspapers, television screens, and social media feeds nationwide. 3-year-old hero. 2 words that changed a courtroom. Tiny girl, brave heart, hero dog. Emily Thompson and Rex. Courage beyond years. The story resonated deeply with a public hungry for hope, courage, and inspiration in a world often overshadowed by fear. News crews camped outside the courthouse, broadcasting live updates and interviews with law enforcement officers, the Thompson family, and even the judge. Morales, standing beside Officer Daniels and Rex, addressed the press with measured but heartfelt words. This was a coordinated effort. Yes, she said, glancing at Rex, who sat attentively beside her, but it was Emily's bravery that made all the difference. She acted with instinct and courage, and that made our job possible. Her words underscored the uniqueness of the case. A child's courage amplified by human and animal collaboration. Inside the Thompson home, the family slowly began to process the events. The initial wave of relief had given way to reflection, gratitude, and exhaustion. Sarah prepared tea while Michael sat on the couch, holding Emily on his lap. The tiny girl pressed her face into her father's chest, occasionally stroking Mr. Bunny's ears, as if seeking reassurance from her loyal companion. "You were incredible today," Michael whispered. "You made everyone proud." Emily, still too young to fully grasp the media frenzy, simply nodded, a faint smile crossing her face. She understood, in her own way, that something extraordinary had happened. Rex's role was celebrated too. Officer Daniels shared stories of the dog's training, his past rescues, and the instinctive way he had recognized Emily's silent plea for help. For many in the town and across the nation, Rex became more than a police dog. He became a symbol of courage, loyalty, and hope. Children and adults alike were captivated by the idea that a four-legged hero had helped save a life, reinforcing the bond between humans and animals in ways that transcended words. The community rallied around the Thompsons. Local organizations offered support, neighbors brought meals, and children drew pictures of Emily and Rex to hang in their classrooms. The story wasn't just news. It became a lesson in bravery, resilience, and hope. Teachers shared it with their students, emphasizing that courage comes in many forms, and sometimes the smallest gestures like a subtle hand signal or a whispered word can have the biggest impact. Meanwhile, Emily's story inspired law enforcement agencies nationwide. Morales and her team were invited to speak at seminars, highlighting the collaboration between child instinct, police procedure, and canine intervention. Trainers emphasized the importance of recognizing subtle cues from children in distress, while the public gained insight into how trained dogs like Rex could detect danger, interpret signals, and act with precision. Emily's 2 words, "good boy," became a case study in communication, instinct, and heroism, demonstrating that even the smallest voice can influence the outcome of critical situations. Emily, of course, remained blissfully unaware of the extent of her fame. Her days returned to a semblance of normalcy, filled with crayons, playgrounds, and storybooks, though now each storybook carried a heavier weight of meaning. Her parents reinforced lessons of safety, courage, and awareness, gently guiding her understanding of the events without overwhelming her young mind. "You were brave, but it's okay to feel scared too," Sarah told her one evening, tucking her into bed. Emily hugged Mr. Bunny tightly, the tiny hero of her own life, and whispered goodnight. As the media frenzy continued, journalists returned to interview the Thompson family, but the focus shifted from fear to inspiration. Emily's story, coupled with Rex's heroism, resonated with people of all ages. Social media posts shared heartfelt interpretations. School assemblies invited officers to discuss the case, and community centers held events celebrating courage and cooperation. It was no longer just a local story. It had grown into a nationwide symbol of bravery and hope, a narrative that would be told for years. The emotional impact on the courtroom participants lingered too. Jurors who had witnessed Emily's testimony were visibly moved, recounting to each other how a tiny voice had altered their perspective. The judge, who had presided over countless cases, noted privately that it was rare to witness such genuine, uncalculated courage. Even the defense team, while performing their duty, could not ignore the profound effect of the child's actions. Emily's innocence had cut through fear, doubt, and skepticism, leaving a lasting impression on everyone in the room. Morales reflected on the broader implications. In training and protocol, we teach officers to assess situations, predict behavior, and act decisively, she said in a later interview. But Emily's instinct, her awareness, and her courage reminded us that human intuition, even at 3 years old, can be just as powerful as any strategy. Rex responded to her signals, but it was her bravery that guided him. That is the lesson. Her words emphasized the extraordinary nature of the rescue, bridging the gap between instinctive heroism and professional expertise. Back at the Thompson household, evenings were filled with quiet reflection. The family sat together, recounting memories of the rescue, retelling the story in fragments that Emily could understand. Michael replayed the events in his mind repeatedly, marveling at his daughter's calm under pressure. Sarah found solace in documenting every detail, from the van's route to Emily's subtle hand signals. Their home, once the site of terror, became a space for healing, gratitude, and the celebration of courage in its smallest yet most profound form. Despite the media attention and community recognition, Emily remained the same spirited, imaginative child she had been before the abduction. She laughed, played, and explored, her bravery quietly embedded within her daily life. Yet, in the hearts of those who witnessed the event's family, officers, neighbors, and viewers nationwide, Emily had become a symbol, proof that courage knows no age. That instinct can save lives, and that even a tiny child's voice can reverberate with extraordinary power. By the end of the week, the emotional waves had spread far beyond the courtroom and the local community. Television networks aired stories of Emily and Rex repeatedly. Social media shared videos and interviews, and educators and law enforcement leaders cited the case as an example of bravery and cooperation. The narrative emphasized not just the danger, but the triumph of hope, courage, and trust. People everywhere were reminded that heroism often comes in unexpected forms, and that the smallest gestures can have the most profound consequences. The emotional aftermath of Emily's words, her whisper of "good boy," continued to ripple outward. Families shared the story with their children, emphasizing lessons of awareness, bravery, and gratitude. Communities recognized the importance of teamwork between humans and animals. Law enforcement agencies incorporated insights from the case into training programs, and journalists highlighted the significance of calm, decisive action in life-threatening situations. Emily's bravery had transcended her age, her voice, and even her fear, creating an impact that extended far beyond the immediate rescue. Even as normal life resumed, the Thompsons could not ignore the indelible mark left by those moments. Emily's courage had saved her, and her recognition of Rex had solidified a bond that would last a lifetime. The town celebrated the trio, the child, the dog, and the dedicated officers as heroes. People spoke in hushed reverence about the rescue at gatherings, school assemblies, and community events. And at night, when Emily hugged Mr. Bunny, she carried a quiet, unspoken pride in what she had done, a reminder of the extraordinary strength within even the smallest among us. The courtroom was filled with a tension that had become almost tangible over the past weeks. The trial had moved forward with meticulous care, every piece of evidence examined, every witness testimony recorded. But it was Emily Thompson and the quiet courage of a 3-year-old that had captured the hearts of everyone present. The abductor sat at the defense table, his face a mask of apprehension, knowing that the chain of events, from the swift abduction to Emily's subtle, life-saving signal to Rex, had cemented the narrative of guilt beyond doubt. Judge Reynolds, a seasoned jurist with decades of experience, presided over the final day of testimony with a measured solemnity. The courtroom, once chaotic with whispers and cameras, was now focused, hushed, and aware of the gravity of the proceedings. Prosecutors summarized the sequence of events, highlighting Emily's bravery, Rex's instinctive response, and the unwavering dedication of law enforcement officers. Every word resonated with clarity, leaving no room for ambiguity. Emily, seated beside her mother, clutched Mr. Bunny tightly, her small hands occasionally brushing against her father's. Though she was young, her presence in the courtroom symbolized more than a witness. She was a living testament to courage, resilience, and the extraordinary impact of a child's instincts. She glanced occasionally at Rex, who remained obediently at Officer Daniel's side, tail low but attentive, as if sensing that the final chapter of their shared ordeal was near. The prosecution detailed the meticulous coordination of the search, the rapid response of law enforcement, and the pivotal moment at the rest stop when Emily made her silent hand signal. This act, seemingly minor but monumental in its implications, had directed Rex to her exact location and led to her safe recovery. Every officer who testified emphasized the significance of that signal, underscoring the profound influence of Emily's bravery on the outcome of the case. As the defense presented its arguments, it became clear that their strategy was limited. They questioned procedural technicalities and attempted to cast doubt on minor points, But the emotional and factual weight of the rescue was undeniable. The courtroom remained silent. The public and jury alike focused on the facts, the evidence, and the courage of a tiny child who had acted decisively in a moment of danger. Even the abductor seemed to shrink under the combined weight of the law and the extraordinary circumstances surrounding his capture. Finally, the jury was called to deliberate. The room emptied slowly, leaving the Thompsons, Rex, and law enforcement officers to reflect on the events that had unfolded over weeks. Emily, despite her age, seemed to understand that this was an important moment. She leaned against her father, whispering softly to Mr. Bunny, as if recounting the day of her rescue. Michael held her close, marveling at the strength she had shown. "You've been so brave, Emily," he whispered, "more than anyone could ever imagine." Hours passed as the jury considered the evidence, weighing testimonies, photographs, and the undeniable proof of Emily's bravery. News crews waited outside the courthouse, broadcasting updates live, while community members gathered in anticipation. The case had captured national attention, and people everywhere awaited the moment when justice would be officially declared. The weight of the community's expectations, combined with the extraordinary circumstances, made the wait almost unbearable. When the jury finally returned, the courtroom fell silent. Judge Reynolds rose, his gavel in hand, ready to pronounce the verdict that would close a harrowing chapter for the Thompsons and the town. The foreperson stood, voice steady but tinged with gravity, and announced, "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty on all counts." The room erupted in a mixture of subdued applause, sighs of relief, and emotional embraces. Michael and Sarah held Emily tightly, tears streaming down their faces. Their daughter had not only survived, but had helped ensure that justice would be served. The abductor was led away in handcuffs, the weight of his actions finally acknowledged in the public and legal sphere. His attempts to manipulate circumstances and evade responsibility had been thwarted by a combination of law enforcement skill and Emily's extraordinary courage. The courtroom remained charged with emotion, a collective recognition that justice, while delayed in some cases, had been achieved. In the aftermath of the verdict, the Thompson family and Rex were celebrated not only for the bravery and skill displayed during the rescue but for the enduring lessons their story provided. Local news outlets interviewed Michael and Sarah, who spoke of Emily's instinct, courage, and the quiet strength of children. Officer Daniels described Rex's heroism and the unique bond that had formed between Emily and the dog. Morales emphasized the collaborative effort that made the rescue possible, highlighting how instinct, training, and human courage intersected in extraordinary ways. The community rallied around the Thompsons, organizing a celebration at the local park where Emily could play freely, surrounded by friends, neighbors, and children who had been inspired by her bravery. Banners read, "Emily Thompson, a hero in pink," and Rex, "our canine guardian." Children brought drawings, letters, and small gifts, each expressing admiration for the tiny girl who had faced fear head-on. Emily, shy but proud, accepted the attention with quiet grace, hugging Mr. Bunny tightly and occasionally patting Rex's head in recognition of their shared heroism. Media outlets across the nation covered the celebration, highlighting the profound impact of Emily's story. Experts in child psychology, law enforcement, and public safety analyzed her actions, emphasizing that even the youngest among us can exhibit extraordinary courage when guided by instinct, love, and trust. Emily's whispered words, "Good boy," had become emblematic of hope, gratitude, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. As the day ended, Emily's parents reflected on the journey that had begun with a terrifying morning and ended with triumph, justice, and profound lessons about courage. Michael held Emily close, his voice quiet but steady. "You've shown the world what bravery looks like, baby," he said. and we'll always remember it," Sarah added, softly brushing Emily's curls from her face. "You've made a difference, and you've inspired everyone who hears your story." Rex, sensing the calm, lay quietly beside Emily, his presence a comforting reminder of the day that fear had been met with courage. The bond between the tiny girl and her canine hero had become unbreakable, a silent testament to trust, loyalty, and instinct. For the Thompsons, the rest of the community, and the nation that had watched the events unfold, the story had become something more than an abduction case. It was a narrative of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary impact of courage in its purest form. Even as life gradually returned to normal, the events lingered in the minds of everyone involved. Emily had demonstrated that bravery is not measured by size or age, but by the willingness to act in the face of fear. Rex had exemplified the power of training, instinct, and loyalty. And the community, inspired by both, had been reminded that ordinary people and animals can rise to extraordinary challenges when courage and heart are combined. In the quiet moments of reflection, Emily sat on the porch, Mr. Bunny in her lap, and watched the sun dip below the horizon. She did not fully understand the enormity of the story that had unfolded around her, but she felt the comfort of home, the warmth of her parents' love, and the quiet strength of Rex by her side. Her courage had changed the course of events, had influenced a courtroom, and had touched a nation. But for Emily, it was simply about surviving, helping, and protecting the people and companions she loved most. The verdict had been delivered, justice served, and the heroics of a tiny child and a loyal dog had inspired countless others. The story was far from over in the hearts and minds of those who had witnessed it, but the immediate danger, the fear, and the uncertainty had ended. Emily's life, once defined by fear for those few hours, now became a symbol of courage, hope, and the extraordinary potential that exists even in the youngest among us. Months had passed since the courtroom drama, but the memory of that day lingered like a warm, enduring glow across the town. Emily Thompson, once a terrified 3-year-old, had grown in ways invisible to the eye. Her bravery at the rest stop, her whispered words of gratitude to Rex, and the courage she displayed in court had become a story told in schools, community centers, and homes nationwide. She had become more than a survivor. She was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary power that even the smallest among us could wield. Life in the Thompson household had returned to a sense of calm, though the family carried an unspoken awareness of the fragility of life. Michael and Sarah carefully balanced normalcy with lessons of vigilance and awareness for Emily. Her days were now filled with crayons, playdates, and laughter. Yet each moment was infused with a quiet confidence that came from having faced fear and prevailed. Mr. Bunny remained a constant companion, a small emblem of courage that reminded Emily of the day she had changed the course of events with a tiny gesture and a whispered plea. Rex, the hero dog, continued to serve with Officer Daniels, but now held a place of honor in Emily's life. The bond between child and dog deepened with every passing day, quiet yet profound. Emily would run through the yard, Rex trotting alongside her, ears perked and tail swishing with subtle pride. It was more than friendship. It was a mutual recognition of the courage and loyalty that had saved her life. Even her tiny hands, once trembling in fear, now reached for Rex with calm assurance, signaling trust and gratitude in every gentle pat. The town embraced Emily's story as a narrative of collective resilience. Local schools incorporated the lessons of her bravery into teaching about courage, awareness, and problem-solving. Children learned that even the smallest actions, like a subtle hand gesture, could have enormous consequences. Community events celebrated not only Emily, but also Rex and the officers who had acted decisively. Banners, plaques, and artwork commemorated the moment at the rest stop, creating a legacy of courage that would be remembered for generations. National attention followed, with television segments, newspaper features, and social media posts highlighting the story. Experts in child psychology emphasized Emily's remarkable calm under pressure, while law enforcement trainers noted the case as an example of effective coordination between human intuition, canine instinct, and professional protocol. Public discussions praised the collaboration between the Thompsons, Rex, and the officers, reinforcing the idea that courage and teamwork could overcome even the most harrowing challenges. Emily herself, though too young to fully grasp the national recognition, absorbed the lessons quietly. She learned the importance of observing her surroundings, staying calm, and communicating clearly, even in terrifying circumstances. Michael and Sarah gently reinforced these lessons, careful not to overwhelm her. "You are incredibly brave, Emily," Sarah told her one afternoon, brushing strands of hair from her daughter's face. "And your bravery will always guide you." Emily hugged Mr. Bunny and whispered, "Good boy," for Rex, repeating the words that had once saved her life. The Thompson family also found healing in shared experiences. Michael reflected on the overwhelming relief of having his daughter return safely, marveling at her courage. Sarah, too, found strength in the community's support and the bond that had grown between Emily and Rex. The story, once defined by fear and uncertainty, had evolved into a narrative of love, resilience, and hope. It reminded them that even in moments of darkness, light could emerge through courage, instinct, and unwavering support. Rex's legacy extended beyond the Thompsons. Officer Daniels continued to share the story with fellow law enforcement personnel, emphasizing the importance of canine training, situational awareness, and the subtle ways children can signal distress. Rex, once a skilled but ordinary police dog, became a living symbol of heroism. His story, intertwined with Emily's, inspired new programs to train children and law enforcement together in safety protocols, creating a broader impact that would save lives in the future. Emily's story also inspired countless families nationwide. Parents shared the narrative with their children, highlighting lessons of bravery and calm in the face of danger. Children's books were written, capturing the events from Emily's perspective, illustrating how courage, instinct, and the bond with a loyal companion could create extraordinary outcomes. Classrooms across the country taught empathy, vigilance, and the power of small actions, using Emily and Rex as tangible examples of heroism accessible to all. As Emily grew, her experiences became a quiet yet powerful force in shaping her character. She remained imaginative, playful, and curious, yet there was a newfound depth to her personality. Her courage, displayed at an age when most children rely entirely on adults for protection, instilled in her a sense of responsibility, empathy, and confidence. Each time she hugged Rex, whispered, "Good boy," or climbed into her father's lap for reassurance, she carried the lessons of her experience, lessons of bravery, awareness, and the enduring power of trust. The town of Thompsonville itself carried the echoes of the extraordinary events. Memorials of the rescue were displayed in public spaces, while law enforcement agencies honored the cooperation between officers, Rex, and Emily. Community members spoke often of the day Emily had faced fear, communicated subtly, and contributed directly to her own rescue. The narrative became part of the town's collective memory, a story that would inspire generations and remind everyone of the profound impact of courage, instinct, and trust. In quiet moments at home, Emily's parents reflected on the journey. They remembered the fear, the frantic search, and the moment at the rest stop when their daughter's courage intersected with Rex's instincts. They recalled the courtroom, where Emily's whispered, "Good boy," had resonated through the room, touching hearts and defining the outcome of a trial. These moments, once traumatic, had transformed into a legacy, a testament to bravery, resilience, and the extraordinary bond between a child and her dog. Emily, now celebrated nationwide, remained humble and unaware of the full extent of her influence. To her, the world was still a place of play, learning, and imagination, with Mr. Bunny and Rex at her side. Yet, in her quiet ways through gestures, calm actions, and instinctive bravery, she continued to demonstrate the lessons she had learned. Courage is not defined by size. Fear can be overcome, and even the smallest voice can have the greatest impact. As the sun set over Thompsonville, the Thompson family gathered in their backyard. Emily played quietly with Rex, who trotted beside her with measured steps, alert and protective. Michael and Sarah watched, hearts full, knowing that their daughter had faced unimaginable fear and emerged not only unscathed, but stronger. The legacy of courage was no longer just a story to tell. It had become a living, breathing reality embodied in a tiny girl, a loyal dog, and a family forever changed. Emily's journey, once defined by terror, now symbolized hope. Her courage had rippled far beyond the rest stop, courtroom, and town limits. It had inspired communities, influenced law enforcement, captivated the nation, and reminded everyone that heroism comes in many forms. A whispered, "Good boy," a subtle hand gesture, and the instinct to act bravely had created a story that would endure for generations. A story of life, resilience, and the extraordinary power of courage in the smallest among us. In that moment, as Emily laughed and ran through the yard with Rex bounding alongside her, the Thompsons understood the full measure of what had been accomplished. Fear had been faced, danger overcome, and a legacy of courage established. And though Emily was only 3, her bravery had already changed the world in ways far greater than anyone could have imagined. The story ended not with tragedy, but with hope, heroism, and a lasting reminder. Courage has no age, loyalty knows no bounds, and even the smallest actions like 2 simple words can resonate far beyond the moment, inspiring countless others to find bravery within themselves.